Okay, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at what we actually find when we're solving by factoring. So we're going to put a couple concepts together and go from there. So first off, when we're asked to solve by factoring, we're going to use two concepts. And the first concept that you should use is factor. So remember, when we are factoring a trinomial, we try to look for the factors of AC, which in this case are a negative 14, that add up to negative 5. So I would choose negative 7 and a positive 2. So if we put our factors in, we get the factorization of our quadratic. And then the step 2 part of solving is this. You will set each factor equal to 0. Okay, so that's pretty important. So when you solve a quadratic, this will be one of the answers, and your other factor equal to 0 will be the other answer. So when we solve this, we would get n equals 7 is an answer, and n equals a negative 2 is a solution to this quadratic. So a couple different ways we can check this answer. One is that if I stick in 7 back into the original equation, I should get equal to 0. Or if I stick in a negative 2 back into the original equation, I should also get 0. So that's one way that you can check your answer. And again, why does this work? It works because if I take a factor, it doesn't really matter what this factor is. If this is equal to 0, 0 times anything will equal 0, and vice versa. If this is equal to anything and this factor is equal to 0, 0 times anything is still going to be 0. Okay. So a couple different things when you're solving for quadratic. You want to factor first and then set each factor equal to 0. Hit pause and try to work on the next one by yourself. The next example that we want to use, again, is a trinomial. In order for factoring, solved by factoring to work, one of the things that you must have is your equation, and you must have equal to 0 on these. So I didn't make that point on number 1, but again, in order for this to work, you must have the equation equal to 0. So let's work through our steps. Our steps again are to factor. So if I look at the factors this time of a negative 28, that add up to a negative 3. Remember, when you have a negative, one of the factors will be negative, one will be positive. If your middle term is negative, you'll want to choose the bigger number to be your negative value. If we do a negative 7 and a positive 4, that's how we'll get a negative 3. So again, your steps for solving are to factor and set each factor equal to 0. So if I set b minus 7 equal to 0, I'll get b equal to 7 as one of my answers. b plus 4 equal to 0. b will equal a negative 4 as another answer. And we will look again at our graphing. But again, I want you to include these on your notes. What you're finding when we're graphing this, remind yourself again that this should be a parabola because we have an x squared, or in this case a b squared. This is a parabola that points up because the coefficient in front of the squared is a positive 1. And what we just found are the zeros or the x-intercepts. So if I were to graph this, I'm going to have an x-intercept at negative 4 and a positive 7. So we would have an up parabola. It'll be graphing of a U, and graphically, that's what these solutions show you. The next two examples might look a little different because, one, they don't equal 0. So again, the first thing that you have to do when you solve a quadratic, what's a quadratic and an x squared, is that the right-hand side has to equal 0. So in order for this to equal 0, we'll just do a quick step where we'll make it equal to 0, so we'll add 28 to both sides. So now, since the equation does equal 0, we can go ahead with our process, which is what? Factor, and then set each factor equal to 0. So again, we're looking for the factors of 28 that add up to negative 11. Since they're both negative, to add up to negative 11, check your 7 and 4. We'll add up to negative 11 and multiply to be a positive 28. When we're asked to solve, then we set each one of these solutions equal to 0. So x will equal 7 is an answer, and x minus 4 equal to 0, or x equals 4 is a solution. Again, when we look at graphing these, what will we see? We'll see a parabola. It'll cross at 4 and 7. Our parabola will go up, and that will kind of give us the shape of our parabola. The last example I'm going to do with you looks a little different for a couple different reasons. One, we have an n squared, and it doesn't equal 0. So again, you must have your equation equal to 0 for this process to work. So the first thing you want to do is make the right-hand side equal to 0. So we would subtract off 5n, and we'd subtract off negative 24 from the right-hand side. Once you have that step, again, highlight your notes. That's very important. It must equal 0 in order to have factor and then set each factor equal to 0. Then we're back to the process. We're getting pretty good at factoring. And then we're looking at the factors of negative 24 that add up to a negative 5. Again, my suggestion is to choose your biggest one, negative, because they need to add up to a negative value. I'm looking at the factors of negative 8 and a positive 3 are my factors. I'm solving. So this solution will lend us an x equal 8 as a solution. This will lend us n equals a negative 3 as a solution. So I'm expecting, when I look at your work, I'm expecting to see an equation equal to 0 first. Then I'm looking for a factor second. And third, write your answer as a n equals, n equals. On a quiz or a test, your step 4 would be to check. That means use your calculator to plug those values back in wherever you see an n and make sure that those equations will work out.